Summer, Stephen, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time. Tell me about your business. Tell me where you guys are located. Give me your website address, your social media stuff.
All right. I guess I'll take care of FamZing, and then I'll bounce it to you for Noveli, and then finish off with my wedding group. So we actually own 3 wedding businesses. I promise we won't use the C word. We'll talk about everything but the C word. So, but the first studio that we have is a studio called FamZing Studios. You can find it at famzing.com, or our hashtag, our Instagram handle is @FamZing. FamZing Studios is a collective of 24 photographers and 6 videographers. And we service the upstate of South Carolina, so Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, Greer, Simpsonville. And we do about 250 events a year. This ranges from everything from weddings to events. These days, a lot of corporate stuff, a lot of live streaming, a lot of virtual, out of the box kind of things. And because of our large amounts of photographers, we are able to be very competitive within that brand. And that studio has been around since 2008.
Nice, nice.
So our second studio is Noveli Photography, and what that studio is it's our husband and wife brand. So he and I shoot exclusively in that studio with also 2 other photographers that we've invited in. It's a different style than FamZing. It's pretty dramatic lighting wise and things like that. You can find us at noveliphotography.com, and then our Instagram is @noveliphotography.
Got it. Got it.
And finally, we have a wedding co-op. It is called My Wedding Group. You can find it at myweddinggroup.com. Instagram handle @myweddinggroup. And what My Wedding Group is kind of a birth of an idea that Summer and I had about 5-6 years ago. And what we found was couples that were coming together and getting married were having a really hard time navigating the landscape. Our original slogan was, "You have the ring, now what?" So it was really hard. And there's so many different mediums of advertising or to connect with a couple. Obviously, you have wedding shows, you've got magazine ads.
Yep.
But if you take like a wedding show, it happens in the winter and then it's done. Then maybe one in summer, and then maybe one in fall. And although it's a great resource to kind of put a bunch of vendors into one location, there was really no vetting of the vendor. They could go to, Wix, throw a quick website up, get some free business cards, call themselves insert wedding profession here, pay for a booth, and then you're done. There's just, so when a couple is walking up, they don't know what they're buying, what they're getting. And so we were kind of finding that even within our group in FamZing, we were finding that our photographers were taking on the roles of other vendors because the florals were falling apart, or the wedding dress ripped, or the cake was falling into itself. And when we talked to our couples afterwards, they were like, "I just didn't know. I just went with whatever Google told me, or I met them at a wedding show." And so with My Wedding Group, we really wanted to create a 2-facet company. And part of that first part is connecting couples with qualified, highly rated, insured wedding vendors, and really a tight-knit community, and also finding all your vendors in one place. You're not going in the vast universe that is Google. They can come into one place. We do have a brick and mortar, so they can come in. We have a bridal consultant that meets with them, finds out what they need, finds out what their budget is, and then aligns them with different vendors. The other side, and this is kind of where we can speak to our own experiences, when we first got into the industry 15 years ago, there was no resource for us on things that we didn't know about, so there was no place to go for social media. There was no place to go for, accounting and taxes. You were just kind of navigating the waters on your own. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to take the opportunity to connect this group of vendors with qualified people to help them run their business. Because, just because you can take a good photo doesn't mean you know the right way to do your business properly. And so And so that's kind of what we want to do. And so my wedding group is 5 years old. We've been approached on a number of different markets to franchise it because the idea is very novel. It isn't just online based. It's got both online as well as a place for couples to come. And the other piece of it too, which is a cause that's really important to Summer and I, is same-sex couples. Them not having, then they're walking, they shouldn't have to ask, are you going to help service us? When you come into my wedding group, part of being a part of that group is they have to service, that clientele. They can't be discriminatory in any way, shape, or form, so that couples of, race and, sexual orientation, they can come into that building and know 110% that they're in a safe environment. They're in an environment to help them, and it costs the couples absolutely nothing because every member pays a very nominal membership fee to be in there. And it's just a very healthy way to connect not only yourselves with the right couple, but also work with a great, number of vendors so that you have a better day yourself.
Yeah, great. So the way that works is couple connects with the planner in the space.
She's an office manager. We also have planners within the space too. So we're not planners per se, but we are just a connection piece to help them connect with the right planner if they want to choose to hire a planner, or maybe they just want day of coordination. And so we have some planners that just do day of coordination. And so the office consultant would help them connect with all the other vendors, and then they'd have that coordinator for day of.
We are huge fans of having a coordinator or a wedding planner there, so we don't have to do it. And so part of our consultant's job is to really talk about certain vendor types, such as planners and coordinators, just so that, because a lot of times people go, I don't want to waste my money. My friend's a planner, and we're like, don't do that, but she can, speak freely and unbiasedly of saying you really need a planner based on your day. Let's have you talk to, to connect.
Yeah. Well, I guess I meant like a consultant, right? So they come in, they talk to the consultant, and they give them guidance on, so they're asking them questions around like your budget and various other pieces to kind of feel out who they are, what they want, and then connect them with a set of vendors that feel like, look, I think these set of businesses will provide the best value for your event, right? That's kind of the idea.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, not just online, but a physical place where they can go and do it, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. They can come as many times as they want. There's free coffee, there's free water. And a lot of our vendors actually use it as a meeting space.
Yeah.
It's about half of our vendors. So if they don't want strangers coming to their house, it's a neutral place. And the showroom is decked out with florals and dresses and everything. So when a couple walks in, they are instantly in wedding mode. And
Nice.
a number of our vendors have said, my conversions have gone up. They've doubled because people walk in, they're instantly like in wedding mode. And so they're ready to
Versus
buy.
like Starbucks, right? Where there's just in the background.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the photography piece a little bit. You have two brands. I take it, did you guys have these brands before you guys got married, or was this just something you said, look, let's have two brands, one that focuses on a higher level clientele, maybe one that focuses on a different whole theme or whatever. Tell me about the differences between the two.
Sure. So our story goes back about 20 years when we both came out of school. We were in other fields. We were in other fields, but photography was always a passion of ours. And we both became very successful within our own brands. I lived around the DC area. Summer lived in Minneapolis. I worked with National Geographic. Summer actually worked in the model industry, so she was shooting for high-end publications. And we had nothing to do with weddings for the first 5 years of our photography career. But then
smart.
Yeah, it was smart. We were like, I'm like, I'll never touch a wedding. When the crash of 06 hit, publications started pulling back their advertising.
Right.
Page counts got smaller, which meant that as freelance photographers, we were needed less, and we both were in very expensive cities. And kind of like we always joke about, no one ever wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a wedding photographer today.
No.
We kind of fell into it by necessity. And I can my personal story, and Summer has a very similar one, is I went and did a wedding for the first time, over 15 years ago. Fortunately, it was for a friend. And when I went in there, Yeah, that's typically where we start.
Yeah.
But after the wedding, although the pictures were fine, the experience was less than stellar. I walked into the groom suite, and there was my buddy, and he's getting his boutonniere pinned on him. And the mom looks at me and says, "Hey, can you help me?" And I'm like, "No." Click, 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 click. When they're cutting the cake, they're like, "How do we cut the cake?" I'm like, "How you cut any cake? Just cut the cake," and which is not true. So, and so, so at the end of the day, I fell in love with weddings because to this day, I'm still in contact with my buddy, and we talk about the photos, and they've got 4 kids now, and but they go back to that day, and over almost 1,500 weddings later, here we are. These people are able to look back at their day and their emotions and stuff like that. So
yeah, and we both lived in obviously different states. So we kind of went on the same journey. We both decided that we needed to further our wedding photography education. So we actually wound up at a conference in California together, and that's how we met. And then he stalked me no, just kidding. We actually dated long distance for almost 4 years. So we fly back and forth to each other. We had contracts, and I wasn't sure whether we didn't know where we were going to live actually. So, but we eventually made it down to Greenville and started FamZing. So that was our first company. Noveli actually came much later, came about 5 years later. So we started FamZing originally.
Yeah, and FamZing was originally our first stab at a husband and wife team that lasted for about 6 months. It's not because we didn't like shooting with each other. It really boiled down to the fact that we were seeing 2 really disturbing things in the market. We were seeing, this was about the era of the consumer DSLR.
Yeah.
You go to Best Buy, buy a camera, the lens comes off, you go shoot some babies in a park, now you're a photographer.
We call it the birth of the Christmas camera photographers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so when we were doing wedding shows, we were talking to, groups of girls as they would come up to our booth, and these bridesmaids that had been married previously, one thing that we pride ourselves on is we turn every wedding in 7 days or less, which is pretty
phenomenal.
For a studio of our size. And because our belief is if you shoot it in camera properly, then you shouldn't spend a lot of time editing the photo. So that really opened our eyes, because we were listening to these bridesmaids now with their friend who was becoming the bride, and talking about their horror stories about how they never got their photos, or their photos were blurry, or they had a dark reception, so all of their photos were in black and white, even though they paid for uplighting and DJ lights and a particular color of their bridesmaids' dresses, et cetera, et cetera. And the flip side of that, we were meeting a lot of photographers, and one thing that Summer and I are always passionate about, we love education. Our path has taken us to be national speakers, which we're really excited and proud of. But back in those days, we just loved educating and bringing on apprentices and things like that. And we were meeting these phenomenal photographers, but they just hated the business side. They would come to us and they're like, "I'm quitting photography." And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Well, if you just take what's currently been going on, this is enough to make people hang up their camera strap and just be like, screw this, I'm going to go to Walmart, and push carts for a living." And so that, so what we kind of sat back and thought about was, well, the reason why a lot of time these girls or these guys are making these decisions on choosing a lower price photographer is because they feel like they don't have the budget. And on the flip side, we have these crazy talented photographers who just don't want to do business stuff. They're introverts. They don't want to sit in front of clients. They don't want to sell people on things. They don't want to do contracts. And so we decided, let's make FamZing into a studio. We brought on the staff, so we actually have a sales manager, we have an office administrator, and what our photographers are able to do, we take care of all the selling, we take care of all the paperwork. They get to meet their clients if they do engagements or bridals, but if not, they meet them on the wedding day. The week of the wedding, they get a timeline that gives them all the information that they need. And we didn't know if the idea would work, because there's a lot of national companies and chains out there that do something similar, but we were very big on not turn and burns. We were very big on the fact that we wanted people to value the photography, want to value the photographers. So we required every single photographer to go through a training process with Summer and myself. They have to test. Typically, we call them our boot camps. We start out with about 12 photographers, about 3 finish.
Yeah.
And then we know that they're FamZing material, and that gives us the opportunity to know that they're going to be successful at what they do.
Yeah.
But
Smart.
at the same time, and at the same time, it allows our clients 110% to know that they're going to get the best possible photography, and that's what's made us the highest rated wedding photography company at this point in the state of South Carolina.
I also joke that we happen to be a marketing company that happens to do photography.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people miss what you just said when they're trying to build a larger brand, and that is make sure there's a process in place to train, and that the people that are working for you represent the style that you want, that they understand that it's your level of skill, because it is your name that's on it at the end of the day.
Yes.
And you need to put the work in to really get them trained and make sure that they're doing it at the level that you would expect and that your customer would expect. That's a smart way to do it. And it's true. It's right. I mean, a lot of times there are people that don't want to do the other part of the business, because the reality is that you have to run a business. If you have a business, you got to run the business, right? Or you got to hire people to do it. If you can't afford to hire people to do it, then you got to do it yourself.
And the secret sauce really boils down. I mean, if you talk to most wedding professionals and whatever, insert wedding profession here, if you have a really difficult client through the planning process, that puts a chip on your shoulder when you walk into the wedding day. I don't care who you are and how smiley you are, it does affect you mentally. And if you're not a part of that, you can walk into that wedding fresh-faced and happy and not have that baggage with you. And that's what's going to allow you to do the most, optimal job that you could do.
Yeah, you come in, you do a great job. You don't have the baggage of the whole deal, right? And then you just come in, do it, and you're done. Right?
Yeah, they don't even edit their own work. We have a team of editors that takes care of that to keep the style consistent. So they simply go in and shoot, and then they get paid.
Yeah, well, and then that's getting better too, right? As technology evolves, right? Then the editing process becomes easier. If you teach them how to take better photos, you have less editing, right? So there's I'm glad you guys talk about that, because it really boils down to like, how do you streamline your business in a way that you can become more efficient? And I think you just said it earlier. I mean, you turn around stuff in 7 days because you figured out how to streamline some of those processes. And I'm sure that as technology changes the things, you'll get it down to a couple of days at some point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Summer is a black belt in Six Sigma. So when it comes to process improvement,
nice.
Running, it's that's from start to finish. That's kind of what we believe in. So
that's great.
And then Noveli, I'll let Summer kind of jump in with how Noveli came about.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, maybe 6 now, Stephen and I just kind of missed shooting together. We had trained all these teams in FamZing, and we continue to train as well, but we just missed shooting together. And so we came back together and started shooting. We were running into the situation in FamZing too, where couples were like, well, how do I get the two of you, like the owners of the company and that kind of thing. And so that's why we decided to start a whole nother brand, because out on the internet, people don't know that we own both. We talk about it, we're transparent about it in a consult, just because we don't want them to think that we're doing kind of a bait and switch or anything like that.
Sure.
So we're very transparent about it. But when they come to us through Wedding Wire, they come to us on a Google search, they don't know that we own FamZing. So as we started to shoot together, we just found that our style was like completely different than FamZing. So we were like, we can't really, because we just have so much more experience, right? So we just couldn't go ahead and upgrade people within FamZing and then go, oh, why didn't I get them, and that kind of thing. So we decided, let's just do a whole nother brand. It's completely separate in the market space. It's a whole different style. And so we shot in that brand together for about a year, and we had such a demand for that style because it's a lot darker than the light and airy Southern style that we see here.
Sure.
So we were having a lot of demand for it. And so 2 of our original FamZingers that had been with us for a long time, we approached them and said, how about you guys go back into apprenticeship for another year and learn the style? And they were all about it. They were like, we want something new. We want it. We want to learn this style. So they did. And so now the 4 of us shoot Noveli weddings. And so we can service, up to 2 weddings in a day. And it's a lot of fun, and we love them. They're like our kids. So
it's basically a combination of the photojournalistic style that I kind of bring to the table and the model lighting that summer brings to the table. And our kind of our slogan within Noveli is that we want our clients to look at their images and say, wow, like this could be in a magazine. They get excited about it, and it's definitely a different style than FamZing. And that style is actually brought Summer and I. We do about half of our weddings as destination now. So we're in New York, Ohio, Portugal, California, Seattle, Mexico, Dominican. So so it's a lot of people who, most of our clientele are not from Greenville. Greenville's become a destination city, and people are coming from Florida, or they're coming in from New York to get married in South Carolina, or we do service North Carolina as well. Charlotte, actually, we've done a number of weddings in Charlotte. So it's been kind of fun to kind of really, it's for that clientele that says, I want you to be cutting edge, I want to be artistic.
And photography means everything to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was talking on Wedding Talk Radio last week with some folks out in California, and we were talking about multiple brands within your company to have an opportunity to reach down into the market. And one of the challenges the guy brought up was that they had a separate brand where they would have apprentice photographers that they would bring on. They would teach them. So they bring them on at that way they could reach down into the market a little bit, charge a lower fee, right? But yet be able to train them, teach them their style and whatever. But he said he always had the challenge of when they were done with that, the customer expected this other brand for some reason. Yep. Have you guys experienced that, and how did you get around it?
So we find we kind of experimented with that a little bit because, I'm obviously a data nut if I'm Six Sigma. So, But anyway, we experimented with it a little bit, and we did a few tests with that. And we find that it's much easier to upgrade a FamZing bride into the Noveli brand if they know about us and meet with us, than it is to downgrade somebody that came to us through Noveli and then they don't have the budget for it. We found that we just kind of quit pushing in that direction because of that exact same scenario that you just brought up. So we find that those couples typically walk away and they will find another husband and wife brand that's maybe cheaper, than us.
Sure.
And that's totally fine because we're not, the photography company for everybody. But yeah, we did experience that a little bit.
And we consult, so we speak at Wedding MBA. This will be, I think, our third year, and we get a lot of people who are doing the multi-ops. And honestly, flip over to the DJs. Mm-hmm. We actually spoke at a DJ conference in Nashville last year, and one of the topics that we talked on was running a multi-op. And they had two problems. The one you just mentioned about how they thought they were getting the higher end brand, but they got the lower end brand. And on the flip side, they had staff who, after you trained them and you went through all this work, they're like, thanks for the training, and they bounced away from you. So there's safeguards that you can put in place to keep the latter from happening. But kind of what Summer was saying, if you're running into that problem, we kind of have a really slick pre-qualification process that we ask the right questions of them. Mm-hmm. And if they come in, you can do it as simple as putting a drop down on your website that says, what's your estimated budget? I don't really care what that number is because you're going to buy more eventually if you're doing your job right. But it's kind of gives you an idea. This is, if they say my photography budget is $2,000 and Summer and I already start out at $4,000, it's going to be a real hard pull to get them up there.
Yeah.
And so that's when we make the right decision, is we don't talk about Noveli. Noveli doesn't exist in that process. And so our sales manager within FamZing, he doesn't sell Noveli.
That's actually helped with that problem, because if you're the other person you were talking to, if they're trying to sell for both, then they're going to run into that instance. But we made the decision to hire a sales manager, and he doesn't even talk about us. He talks about his own wedding horror story, which is what his story is. Mm-hmm. And so he made just glimpse on us that we own the company, but he doesn't talk about Noveli at all. And so then there's no temptation for them because they don't know us. People that want us, it's because we sat in front of them and they just kind of fell in love with our personalities and that kind of thing. So,
well, and the temptations also too, if you own the company and you want to do that wedding, the temptation that we're going to taint your own sale. Yeah. You're going to be like,
He's adorable.
This couple's really cool. I know they can afford us, but I'm going to really try to push them on that. And then, you basically show them the Mercedes that they can't afford, and then they're going to settle for something, and they don't want to go back to the Kia. That's just kind of the mindset of it. So, sometimes you just have to separate out the brands, and if someone reaches out to you, don't try to upgrade them, or don't even talk about the different brand. Keep each brand separate, but still be transparent that if someone asks the question that you own them both, then yes, we own them both.
Yeah, I think his challenge was they were expecting the quality of the higher brand, but they were they were paying for this other brand, and not, they're like, oh, well, how come we didn't get this? And then they would end up doing it. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff that went around that he, probably shouldn't have done, but whatever. It's just an interesting conversation about how do you keep two brands away? Because I did an interview with a videographer who has actually 3 brands, and one is like this more commercial drone type thing, and then they have this medium level brand, which is him and another photographer that they do. It's kind of like their high end wedding or event brand. And then they have this lower end videography brand that they do, that they specifically just get traffic from, like the Knot and Wedding Wire, and they focus specifically on that brand. But then he moves some of that business up into the other brand when they want certain things, when they're in the meeting and they want certain things. Oh yeah, well, we have that, but it's over here in this other brand. So if you want that, then we'll move you over here. I guess it works differently for different people, right?
Expectations. I mean, you got to really, that's the thing, is the expectations are there. So like within our 2 brands, we have a film division within Noveli, which is going to be that crazy slow-mo drone, all that kind of stuff. And within the studio, we don't offer that. They're not paying for that. And so when they want to, and again, it's asking the right questions. If they're looking for that cinematic adventure, it's like, well, okay, if you're looking for Hollywood level stuff, you're going to pay for Hollywood level stuff.
That's
or
right.
are you thinking about a video that you may watch on your anniversary? Like, let's weigh those 2 things out.
Yeah, exactly. Or you're never going to watch it again, right? I mean,
right.
Who cares?
Don't say that. They watch it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, but the reality is it depends on what's important to people. Sometimes photography is just not important. I mean, I realize that it is for most people, but for some people, it's not. Video is not important.
And that's really what FamZing is if they're like, photography is a checkbox for me. I need a quality photographer. I don't care who it is. Then FamZing's the perfect brand for that.
Yeah.
And then with Noveli, they want to know us. They want to know that we're going to do their engagements and her bridal portraits.
Exactly.
And then go out and have maybe a happy hour together or something.
Yeah. Right. From a couple's perspective, what would you say are some questions they should be asking when they're interviewing photographers?
Definitely not like, what is your equipment? Because they don't know whether it's good or not. So, but that's always funny when they come in with that list from the Knot.
What's your list of equipment? What kind of equipment you guys have?
Yeah, it's like asking a baker what type of oven they use. Like, it isn't the process that you get there. It's really the result, And so, for me, when we
in our consult, we answer like pretty much all of their questions. Like, they usually come in with a list, and at the end they'll look through it and they'll go, nope, you're good. So
I mean, we critique. So we've spent the number of years of talking about overcoming sales objections through giving them the expectations right up front. So when they come to us, we give them our history, we tell them about our brand, we walk through the whole wedding day with them from start to finish, and we answer the questions for them. Not every photographer is going to do that, and I get that. But I guess if this is really going to be couple focus that's going to be watching this, I think really getting to know the photographer's personalities, that's really important, because if you and I aren't clicking on all cylinders, and you and Summer aren't clicking on all cylinders, then when you are, we're going to be around your family all day. This is a very personal business. And so when we're around mom and dads, and if there's divorces, if there's grievances, there's a lot of different family dynamics.
There is a lot of emotions going on. Yeah.
And if you have a photographer that doesn't understand and embrace that, then it might be an awkward situation during family pictures. That would be one piece of it. I would definitely talk about backup. I mean, not even just backup gear, but backup.
Do you have a backup if you broke your leg? Like, who's going to go in and shoot my wedding? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, this current situation that we're dealing with, we're getting a lot of calls to the studio because they booked another photographer. Well, they booked a photographer. Well, then they had to move to the fall. Well, that photographer was just a one-man show or one-woman show, so they couldn't fulfill that date. So they had to cut the contract with them, and now they're looking for a new photographer. So make sure there's a backup because, you know, this pandemic's not going to probably happen again for a couple of years. But, you know, sickness happens, pregnancy happens, deaths in family happens, things happen. So I would definitely make sure that there's a backup plan for not only equipment. Well, I'll say this: equipment, people, staff, and what the heck happens to my images after the wedding. Because what happens after the wedding is just as important as what happens during the wedding. So if you talk to them, like and I'm very clear, like, ask them going, what do you do after a wedding? Like, don't ask them why. Like, what do you do after a wedding? You know, like, oh, I love to go to my local watering hole and hang out with my buddies, you know, then, you know, that camera bag's probably sitting in the back seat of a car, you know, not safe, or it goes home and gets thrown into a closet. You know, I would make sure that we have a 3-point backup system. So all of our photographers have to report back to our studio that night. We have somebody there waiting for them. They get the cards. Everything is offloaded onto our studio server. It goes onto the cloud and also a copy onto our home server. So by the time our couple falls asleep or wakes up the next morning, their wedding photos exist in 3 places.
And we actually lock their cards in a fireproof safe. So until the wedding's delivered to the couple, they stay in that fireproof safe. And
that's smart.
Yeah. Just because we want to make sure, like, if something happened during the copying process or something like that, we still have those original cards to go back to.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Those are really good questions.
We're very risk adverse. So.
Yeah, it's quite, when we mention this, people go, "Oh my God, I didn't even think about asking that," because the knot doesn't tell you to, or the wedding wear doesn't. They're like, you know, what's their style and what kind of gear do they use, and, you know, do they love Mondays? You know, I mean, you know, it's more along the lines of like get to the nitty gritty of like what's going to happen to my images, because at the end of the day, this is our sales manager. You know, his story was that him and his wife paid buku bucks. They got married on a beach. They paid buku bucks to have this coffee truck drive on the beach and provide warm and cold beverages to their family during the reception. The photographer didn't take a single photo. All he has is a Nokia pixelated photo of this truck that his aunt took on her Nokia phone. Wow. You know, and so it's that kind of stuff, but he's still grateful for that photo, even though it's crap. I mean, so it's kind of the things that aren't sexy to ask. You should ask those before you ask the sexy questions.
That's a good question. Yeah, for sure. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about business side of things. For you guys, what would you say over the past couple of years has worked well for you?
Boy, that's a loaded question.
Well, I think hiring the sales manager has been really awesome for us. And one of the things that Stephen touched on earlier, which I think is just important in general, is like, if you don't have the skill set to do whatever it is, accounting, your marketing, your social media, like, hire somebody that has that skill set so that you have more time back in your life to do the things that are important and the things that you're good at. So hiring a sales manager has been awesome. Awesome.
I think part of that, not everybody has the bankroll to bring on a salaried employee. But the thing to think about is that, as Summer was saying, if you're not good at it, find somebody to do it. But also, if that frees up more time, then be innovative about how you can use that extra time. Can you go get more weddings? Can you streamline your editing process? Or
can you start another business?
Something that's going to, keep you strong, not only financially right now, but financially in the future. So I would definitely say, if stay in your lane. If it's not in your skill set, then feel free to offload that to somebody else. And even trade. I mean, you know, if you're new and starting a photographer and you need accounting help, find a really good CPA and be like, listen, I don't have a ton of money, but I bet you need headshots. I bet you need, profile shots or something, let's work out a trade or something to, to get them in the right, business mindset to do their taxes right.
Was there a turning point for you guys? Like, this is always the challenge, I bet, for small businesses that are one-person businesses or couple businesses, and then they go like, look, we need to expand a little bit and hire someone, but the risk of hiring someone puts you in a burden place, right? Because now all of a sudden you have a full-time employee, which you need to pay a salary, etc. Um, what was the, like, I'm sure there was some fear and anxiety that was going through you at the time that you first did that. What was the turning point that helped you
I remember the turning point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the turning point. We were discussing the idea of hiring a sales manager, and of course it's you can look at it as an expense, but Steven turned to me and he said, what if we pay them $100,000 and they make us $1 million? And I went, it's a different way to look at it, right? So I was like, that's an investment. That's advertising. That's, you know, any investment that you make, I need to quit looking at it as a cost. And so we hired him, and he's just been killing it. Like,
well, and you got to kind of look at it. I mean, even with like having like our administrator, she takes care of timelines for us and things like that. Of course, we came up with the process, et cetera, she's implementing it. But it kind of, I mean, I'm going to quote Alan, you know, on this. And, you know, Alan said, you know, if you spend $100,000 on a billboard and you make $1 million, that was a really good investment.
Yeah.
If you spend $2 on an ad that doesn't make you any money, that was a bad investment. So it's a double-edged sword. Yes, you are investing in the fact that I'm going to pay this person a salary to work for me for a year. But if you have the goals in place, if you have it laid out to how it's going to help you in the long term, that's going to let you make sure that they are meeting those goals and they're meeting the expectations, that they are the right person to do that for you. But B, you know, it's going to, you know, allow you, like Summer was saying, to be able to, you know, that person's full focus is sales. They're not getting pulled aside to this network.
Yeah.
They're not getting pulled aside because there's a customer service issue or there's editing to be done, or et cetera, et cetera. They're fully focused on that. And that turning point was when we hit a certain sales number, and we looked at each other, and I'm like, we know we can do more, but we physically can't do anymore. We're working 80 hours a week, and there's, without keeling over and dying, there's just no way we can do any more. So that was kind of our turning point.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What have been your, over the past couple of years, beside what's happening today, what has been your biggest challenges, would you say?
Boy.
I think, you know, continually training is sometimes a challenge, and just making sure that we've got the right people going to the right weddings. Scheduling is always a challenge with FamZing for sure, because of, you know, just logistics of everything there. But we have a great group, and we're all about the culture. Like we like to breed in a fun culture, a lighthearted culture, that kind of thing. So I think continually doing that could, you know, maybe be a challenge, but we just continue to work at it.
I mean, part of running any business, I mean, I admit back in the day, you know, which no one's ever left FamZing angry or bitter. You know, most of the time when we lose a photographer these days, you know, they're young when they come to us, and now they're married and they're starting a family and they have 2 kids and they don't want to give up their weekends anymore. But I mean, back when we first started the studio, I mean, we were doing, you know, 200 events across 8 of us, and, you know, and we were just burning people out left and right, including ourselves. And so, I think that was one of the biggest lessons, is that, you know, I don't want to say the word take advantage of, but I think there's a level of, you know, over-promising and under-delivering when it came to our staff. And so that was something that we had to take a step back on and, you know, really flex our muscles. And that was also part of having Kyle take on the role.
And we also actually, that taught us to kind of instill more expectations with our customers, just be more firm about expectations, because some of the things that we were doing is like, we would have one photographer service like a getting ready location, and then a ceremony location, a reception location, and they were just like getting burnt out running all over, you know, in a day. And so as we were in the thick of it, and we were shooting these weddings too, because he shot, I think, 62 weddings that year, and I shot 57.
Wow.
Yeah, we were feeling it, but we were in the thick of it. So it's like, you can't see the forest through this tree. So when we started to take a step back and say, okay, how do we feel? Then we knew like how our staff felt about it too. And so we were like, let's take a step back. Let's have more staff. Let's take it easy on them. Let's set some expectations with these customers that they need a second photographer if they're going to have multiple locations, things like that. And so once we started to do that, it really helped, I think, with those challenges.
And whether you're a single op or multi-op, you have some sort of culture that you instill in yourself. And I think part of having any sort of culture is to let it evolve. And, you know, what doesn't work, doesn't work. What does work, figure out how to make it a little bit better. And what worked for us, you know, when we opened the studio in 2008 does not work with us for today, you know. And for us, we took it on to where, you know, pricing was a big thing too. I mean, you know, we came to the market with low pricing. We're now at a very competitive price point. But for us, we'll encourage a second photographer, even though we're going to make more money selling 2 singular photography packages. We would rather sell the one because we don't want to burn out our photographers, because honestly, they're our greatest asset. So
smart. Yeah, that's smart. If you had to go back and tell your guys self something 5 years ago, out of everything you've learned, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Buy Amazon.
I think everybody would have told themselves that, right?
But probably that piece of it, you know, and you know, part of any business is those growing pains and just kind of figuring out a way. But if we could miraculously know, I think we'd go back and tell ourselves that, like, that we did need to set those expectations, that we did need to not burn people out, you know, and not burn ourselves out. And, you know,
I would say this, you know, I'm a very competitive person when it comes to everything. That's just my nature, you know, and I'm originally from Detroit, so I'm a Lions fan, which is sad. I'm still competitive. I'm still screaming at the TV every freaking Sunday. But, you know, as we've grown in our community, you know, some of our best friends are photographers, and they're our competitors as well. And I think that's part of the culture that we kind of learned ourselves, and we're trying to instill within our community here. We have been for the past, you know, 7 years and that's part of my wedding group. We have, you know, 6 other photographers in there, you know, that are our competitors. But when we're booked, or when the client doesn't particularly like the style of FamZing or Noveli, you know, they're going to jump over to another photographer. And we've been able to mentor some of those photographers and help their business. And it's been fun to watch them grow. And honestly, a huge part of referrals we get is from those photographers. So, you know, if you're upset about your competition, stop. Just stop. Like, if you're upset about it, like, if you are I don't know, if you're a event planner, there's a new event planner coming on the scene, embrace that person. If you're a wedding show and there's another wedding type minded business, embrace them, you know, like there's no room for competition.
One of my favorite competition stories, just to that point, is that when one of our bakers ran out of lard or butter or something, they called one of our other bakers and asked, do you happen to have some? Because there was like a shortage, and they're like, absolutely, I got you. So I love, we try to breed that the competitors work together and become best friends and refer to each other, you know, so.
Well, you know, the reality is, in the competitive space, you know, like in photography and DJ and so forth, you know, people that work at a certain level aren't necessarily competitors. It's really the alternatives that are really your competitors, right? What are the alternatives that consumers have in regards to hiring a photographer, right? They could hire their best friend to do it. They could go hire the guy off of Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. Those are really the competitors you're dealing with when it comes to the competitive space. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. You know, the wedding space is very relationship oriented, as you already know. And so people that work at your level, right, and the photographers, like the photographers you mentioned, you guys are all, even though you're all doing different weddings, you would consider that as competitive. You're all friends, right? And you're all kind of like share, like, oh, well, I can't do it. Hey, you got time, you can do it, whatever. Your real competitors are not those people. That's really what I want to say. It's the all other things that people have to worry about.
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So last question, what is your most inspirational or best or worst wedding story that you want to share with me?
Well, we could write a book.
Yeah, boy.
Sure.
We've had lap dances. We've had brides. We've had our matron of honor slap a bride and the bride slap her back. And there were sisters. Boy, we've had. I would say this.
One of our most inspirational wedding stories, I think, would be Jennifer and Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from a wedding and from a career. So from a wedding point of view, we had a couple. They the sweetest couple ever. They'd actually came in to talk to us about our FamZing studio. This is a couple years ago before we had a sales manager. And we have a very close friend. They were bride and groom of ours 6 years prior. We became friends after the wedding. Long story short, we're the godparents of their kids. I mean, it's a whole long relationship we've had. We went to Colorado with them that year, and she's notorious for like texting the crap out of us, relentlessly.
But never calls.
Yeah, never ever calls. So this is on a Sunday, and so we're sitting in the studio. And our phones are
consulting with this couple, with the other couple.
Yes, yeah, we're talking about their wedding. We're about halfway through the consult, and our phones just blow off the hook. They just go crazy off the hook. And so I finally look at her, and I'm like, "Can you just please answer her? Like, like she never calls, so I don't know."
Something must be wrong, right? She never calls.
Yeah, so she steps out of the room, and our friend, basically lets us know that her husband, he was my best friend, had passed away from a heart issue.
Wow.
That morning. And so we walk back into our studio or into the consult room, and we're just kind of stunned. And she's like, lets me know that, our friend had passed, and I have to cut the consult short. And, we have to go, obviously go to our friend, console her. And this couple ends up, reaching out to us a couple of weeks later. And they said, we really couldn't afford you guys, but we decided, we just saw your heart and we saw how you guys were during the consult before all that happened. And we decided to back off a couple other things to afford you guys, because we really feel like you need to be a part of our wedding. And so their names are Jennifer and Brandon. They're like, it's actually his birthday was yesterday, but they're just super, the sweetest couple in the world.
And it was funny because like the day they signed their contract, I checked the mail at my wedding group, and they had sent a card, even before they booked us, they had sent a condolence card to us, which was really sweet. And he actually has went on video. They just volunteered to go on video, and they just did a cell phone video at their house to tell people that photography is the only thing that you have left, and that they really couldn't afford us, but they made some adjustments. And it was really cute because they're sitting on their couch, and their wall behind them was all their wedding photos. And she just talked about how much she loved her photos, and how it just wasn't, it was like the right thing to do. So
and when we did their engagement session, and we actually went out and just kind of talked to them during the engagement session. And I apologized. I said, "Hey guys, I'm so sorry for what happened." And they said, the reason why we went with you, and the reason why we felt you were worth the money, is because we saw such a tragic thing happen to you guys in that moment. And we knew that the photos that you guys had, the wedding photos that they had, would be the only thing that their kids could go back and see mom and dad, getting married. And she goes, we just realized at that point that there's nothing more important than the wedding photography and wedding video that you were going to provide to us. Like that was it right there. And I was like, that's a really bad sales pitch, but it's a true story. And then from a professional point of view, like I said, Summer and I love educating. It's one of our favorite things to do. We've been really honored to be a part of a lot of photography conferences over the years. But really to be on a big stage as Wedding MBA, we got to speak on that stage a couple of years ago. I've been honored to have been invited back every year since. And it was really cool just to sit in a room, and we had like 200 some photographers our first talk, and it was about the most boring topic ever of editing. But we made it fun. We had fun with it. That was kind of a really fun moment for us to really kind of reach out to, because we were at that point at one time 15 years ago. I was a dumb kid who was trying to get into weddings, and no one was with open arms, taking me in, going, let me show you the ways of how to do it. And so it's been kind of a mission of ours to find a way to help educate other people stepping in this, because we've been able to live our dream and make this our primary job. And there's no reason why other people can't have that opportunity as well.
That's right.
For everybody.
Yeah. Summer, Stephen, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great weekend.
Hey, Shane, we appreciate the time.
Yes, thank
you. All right.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. I hope that you found it helpful. Please share it with other people. Also, if you're getting married or you work in the wedding industry, I would love to interview and share your information with other people. Send me a text 520-399-8580 or shoot me an email at letschat@wedding.report.